As you can see, I was born into a revolutionary family and a revolutionary tradition. Duruti, the son of a railroad worker, short, stocky, and very strong. These are quotes. A kind man with a Herculean body, the eyes of a child in a half-savage face. Isn't that a fantastic? I didn't write this. This was Federico Montseny, who was a leader in this, of the revolution, said this. Duruti, a man who laughed like a child and wept before the human tragedy. Duruti, his column carried aloft by comrades through the streets of Barcelona, his path attended by over 500,000 mourners. Duruti, whose column, noted a comrade, is neither militarily nor bureaucratically organized. It has grown organically. It is a social revolutionary movement. The foundation of the column is voluntary self-discipline. At the end, its activity is nothing less than libertarian communism. Of course, they meant communism in a different way. Duruti, who said, "We carry a new world here in our hearts." That was the essence of my father. He carried a new world in his heart. In the words of James P. Thompson, who was a great wobbly, and I quote him earlier, a world without a master and without a slave. Call it foolish, call it naive, call it visionary. That was the cause to which he dedicated his life. And then I add, lofty stuff. The reality is, I hated my name as a child. Bad enough Anatole, and with it the God forbid connotation of femininity on the Lower East Side, reinforced by Danny Kaye's swishy "I'm Anatole of Paris" routine in the hit movie of the time, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Bad enough Anatole, but Duruti, such a strange name out of nowhere. I was never quite sure of the spelling. The neighborhood Johnnies and Jimmies laughed at me when the teacher read it off in class and my shameful secret was exposed. I hate my name, I would announce dramatically to Mother, who took these things seriously, which is partly why I brought the subject up, to mischievously get her riled, ruffled. "Sam, the boy hates his name," she would announce in hurt, baffled tones. And my father would say simply, "The day will come when you will appreciate your name. It is a name of nobility and honor." Who needed that? But the years have passed. This is when I was a kid. But the years have passed, and yes, I have come to appreciate my name, deeply so. I have come to embrace it as a way of coming home to do the right thing by my heritage in my old age. How to do this? I will never be the man Bonaventura Duruti was, nor frankly the man my father was, warts and all. I'm also not a professional historian. What I can do is tell stories of my parents and their world, which spanned 70 years of revolutionary activity, of the wobblies and anarchists of my childhood, a colorful lot, of what it was like to grow up in a family whose ethics and politics ran against the grain. Hopefully it will add up to a history of sorts, one you can enjoy. Do not look for objectivity, to hell with it. I've read many of such objective accounts of the anarchists and wobblies, and few of them bear any resemblance to the flesh and blood human beings who broke bread with us and snored on our sagging couch. I've opted for the truth instead. So this is from the introduction of my book. And I could go on with it. There are many characters in the book. One of the great, since this is a wobbly meeting, one of the great men that my father was close with was, well, can I read it to you? You mind if I read it to you? No, I don't want to go on. You know what I mean. It's bragging too much. Here, I'm trying to find the right. Here it is, Ben. So the reason I read it to you, it's easier for me to read it to you and you get the flavor of the book. I am 5 or 6 years old, 5 or 6 years of age, at the 510 Hall. Now, I have to tell you, I start the book by a description of walking across town with my father on a Sunday, me and my brother Abraham, to the 510 Hall. And the 510 Hall was local union 510 of the Marine Transport Workers, IWW. And sitting there with the old Wobblies in the hall as a little boy, and I described what it's like as a little boy among these men, you know. And I introduced the reader to the world of the Wobblies this way, if you follow me. And you know, I tell that anecdotes. I used to play checkers. They were not what you call politically correct, you know. The guy had bad eyes in 2 directions. They called him cockeyed Cunningham. You know, you wouldn't do that today, would you? Cockeyed Cunningham. And he knew it. He was called Dick the Greek, you know. So there was an old boxer. His face was all banged up, you know. So they called him Punch Drunk Morse. And that was his name, Punch Drunk Morse. So I used to play checkers with him as a little boy. And he was the sweetest man in the world. He wouldn't have heard of. He said, "I don't hit civilians." That was his attitude. You know, ordinary people. He wasn't a bully or anything. So the anecdote my father would tell. My father loved to drink. He was an alcoholic, actually. I write about that too. That's not so pretty. That's not so humorous. So they're in this bar. You know, with sawdust on the waterfront bar, you know, tough bar. And there was a certain type of character, I don't know if he's still around, but he wants to prove his manhood, his toughness. So what better than to fight a boxer, beat him up? I could beat him, you know, professional. So there's little Morse, he's about 140 pounds, a great big moose of a guy. He starts to bother him, push him. On, and finally Morse says to him, "Oh, you want to fight me? Here, hit me. And he stands in the bar, in the room, and this great big guy swings out, and Morse goes like this, and he goes like that, and he gives him a nudge, and he puts his hands in his pocket, never lays a hand on him. The guy swings and swings to exhaustion, like a bull in the chimney. He keeps swinging, and he can't hit him. And the guy... And he said, "Oh, you're happy now? You got it out of your system?" And he walked away. He wouldn't. I call it a Buster Keaton farce come to life, you know. He just wouldn't. You know, he was a gentle person. So he was a boxer, of course. He wasn't so gentle in the ring. So then they had another guy. The Wobblies were very colorful characters. You got to understand that. They were not the Wobblies of maybe you guys and me. You know, I'm a prof. I went to a good school. I'm not. I don't claim to be like these guys, but they were not like these guys. They were tough sailors, lumberjacks, you know, rugged guys. So there was another fellow. His name was Sammy Weinstein. He was a boxer. In those days, people think of Jews today as well off, and not necessarily. First of all, and secondly, in those days, it wasn't like that. And, you know, boxers come from the press classes. That's why they're all black today. So you had Jewish guys who were boxers. So there was one guy named Sammy Weinstein. He was a fervent wobbler. And he put on his trunks, IWW in the back of his trunks. And he'd come out of the ring, and the audience would clap because they all knew the Wobblies. A lot of the working men, even though they were not members of the Wobblies, they always respected them. They always liked them. So my father had this growling sense of humor, and he says, "You know, it wasn't good propaganda in the long run." He says, "Poor Sammy spent too much time on his ass." Because he get knocked out. This is my father's humor. So anyway, so I'm reading about Ben Fletcher, right? I am 5 or 6 years of age at the 510 Hall, while a small clutch of men, including my father, speak animatedly about things that buzz above me. My eyes are locked on one man in that group. I follow him wherever he steps. At a certain distance, too shy to approach. I am engrossed in the light that reflects purple and dark blue off his forehead and cheeks, and by the contrast of his totally black skin and the whites of his eyes. No doubt such interest is not new to him. When our eyes meet, he smiles at me in a kindly way. The name of this blackest of men was Benjamin Harrison Fletcher. He was among the greatest of IWW organizers and one of the pioneer civil rights leaders of the 20th century, unsung and forgotten today. And so this is how I start my section on Ben Fletcher. And did you ever hear of Ben Fletcher? Did you? You don't, you had? Okay, you all have. So I knew Ben when I was a little boy. He died in 1949, so I was a kid. But I go on to describe what he did. It wasn't only he, it was a group of wobblies, white as well as black. But they organized the Philadelphia docks. Big deal. They had he had 10,000 men that depended on him. And I knew many of these people when I write about them. And he was a tremendous man. But I say over here, Ben Fletcher was my first conscious knowledge of the black race. He appeared an old man whose health was shot when I knew him, a bit heavy with a paunch and with thick working men's shoulders that sloped oddly, the result of a stroke, my father told me years later. All in all, he did not cut the heroic figure of a black man white people in the 1940s found acceptable. He looked nothing like the relatively light-skinned heavyweight champion Joe, quotes, a credit to his race, they always said that, Joe, a credit to his race, Lewis, or a generation later, like Sidney Poitier, handsome, with ramrod straight posture, who wore his dignity as a suit of armor. Instead, he projected good humor and decency. You wanted to be in his company. But there was something sad that seeped through. Matilda Robbins was a wobbly organizer who knew Ben in the full bloom of his youth and power at a time when he was responsible for the organization and welfare of 10,000 men. She remembered Ben as soft-spoken and that, quotes, his eyes seemed to reflect the tragedy of his race. Sam called Ben Fletcher undoubtedly the most eloquent, humorous speaker I've ever heard, which is saying quite a lot. His ringing voice needed no microphone. He was fond of retelling the incident Ben had recounted to him of the time his black skin saved his life. It is 1912 or thereabout, and Ben is on the soapbox addressing a crowd of longshoremen on the Norfolk, Virginia docks. Remember, this is 100 years ago. 10 men, all white and all business, joined the audience. They are interested in nothing Ben has to say, save the answer to the single question that pierces the air. Nigger, what do you think of miscegenation? The crowd tightens around Ben like a noose. It is a classic lynching setup. For a full tense minute, Ben's eyes size up each and every member of the crowd. Well, he says at last, I see a whole lot of folks here whiter than I am. And you damn know well how that happened. It takes a moment to sink in. The tension is broken. The moment is past. It's hard to work up whatever it takes to murder a man when you have just laughed at his joke. Then I say, I cannot imagine the courage of a man such as Ben Fletcher to stand exposed in front of a hostile crowd in the jaws of the Jim Crow South of 1912. Can you imagine? Espousing revolutionary unionism and racial integration, no less, at a time when a black man in the South had to step out of the way of an approaching white man.